This podcast was brought to you in part by Dragon Shield. Use code PLAYTOWIN5 at the affiliate link down below for 5% off to help support the show.
Welcome to the Play to Win podcast, where we talk about winning in cEDH. I'm Cam.
And I'm Dylan. This week we're talking about a couple different things. Modern Horizons 3, a couple cards we missed, the impacts on the format, where cEDH is on the whole right now, and kind of just whatever we want to else about cEDH. Does that sound right?
Pretty much. It's like the initial impressions of Modern Horizons 3 and cEDH now that we've all gotten the chance to play a couple of the cards.
We're going to work on that title for the final title, but that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, this was our first draft. This was actually not even our first draft.
Believe it or not, this has went through some renditions already.
Many renditions, yeah. And it still turned out how it turned out.
Differently?
Yeah, not this.
There's a couple cards that we didn't talk about in our 2-episode-long set review. One, because we kind of missed them. Two, we could also say because there just wasn't enough time. It was already 2 episodes, you know? We missed them. But we're going to talk about those first, I feel like, because that's what we've been thinking about the most.
Yes, exactly. Now, the first thing that I want to point out is actually something that we did talk about on a card. I don't think we emphasized this part enough because we talked about Necrodominance a lot on the show being like super good, and like I think we talked about it in pretty much any deck that's already running Necropotence and the like Final Fortune and what's the other card? Born Upon the Wind.
That's the one.
Thank you for that. That was a nice
You're
assist you
welcome.
had there. So, Necrodominance, if we can just recap, is 3 black for a legendary enchantment that makes you skip your draw step. At the beginning of your end step, though, you may pay any amount of life, and if you do, draw that many cards. Your maximum hand size is 5, and this is the part that I want to highlight again. If a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So this is a notable difference from Necropotence that only exiles the cards that you discard,
Right.
and then anything that you escape with Underworld Breach stays in your graveyard and you can keep going through the loops. But I don't think that we emphasized enough that if you are trying to go through Underworld Breach lines, this makes it like significantly more difficult to do so.
Yeah, Brain Freeze, Mills cards. So Necropotence doesn't care about that. Those cards will go to the graveyard.
Exactly.
But Necrodominance, not the case. Those cards are getting exiled.
Yeah.
So with Necrodominance, the play patterns will more often be like eventually you'll have to get rid of your Necrodominance, which is just an extra step that you sometimes don't have to go through with Necropotence. Still a good card, but maybe not every single deck is going to play it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be more for like the Esper decks that we're playing Born Upon the Wind.
Sure.
So like,
yeah.
I think having this in like a Zur, like a second copy of Necro for Zur, I think is also like really good. But maybe like Mardu decks don't want this as strongly.
Yeah, I think that is probably right. There still are some maybe that would, but yeah, I agree. You don't necessarily need it. Yeah, maybe just the breachless decks.
Yeah. Does that affect your rating of this card at all?
I guess so. Yeah, I guess it probably would. I wasn't exactly thinking about that. The cards just seem like if you get so many cards, doesn't matter. You should be able to get rid of it more often than not, but sometimes you won't. So it'll drop it by a couple points. I don't remember what I gave it last time. Whatever that is, minus like 0.4.
Minus 0.4, yeah. I think it's probably minus 0.4 for me as well, just because you said that.
Yeah.
So it's going to get minus 0.4, and I should say that the reason why we found this out was because over this past weekend while we were at Command Fest Atlanta, we did play against a Dahada deck that notably was excluding this card for that reason, because Dahada's minus would just put no treasures into play.
It just does not work at all. Most of that deck strategy is milling. You want to mill with your Diod or flicker your Diod and stuff like that. So that would be difficult.
Yeah, Turbo Underworld Breach does not line up here. Okay, so that's the first thing I just wanted to point out.
I also wanted to point out something about Nadu.
Oh yeah, okay.
I think I made the comparison that Nadu was similar to Stella Lee in power level. I remember saying something like that. That was wrong. That was not right. I have since played against Nadu. That feels very wrong. Nadu feels, to me, and it's been only a few games, so it's hard to actually tell still. I've only maybe played against it 10, 15 times.
I was the pilot of most of those games.
Yeah, we played 5 games a day over the weekend, and I played a couple more. So it was over 15 times I played against a deck, I feel like, right?
Yeah.
The deck is very powerful. It feels like a tier 1 deck to me, very firmly. Stella Lee feels like a great tier 2 option. That is something that you can play, but I don't see it dominating tournaments. I think Nadu is going to dominate a couple tournaments.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think we kind of already see that. There was already a top 4 that had 3 Nadus in the top 4.
Yeah, and some of that is recency. People are just trying it out, right?
Oh yeah, when so much of the field is Nadu and the deck's so good, like it's bound to do that well. And I think a lot of it too is there might not be a lot of people that know how to play against it immediately too. So it's also going to like get away with a lot more wins because the people that study Nadu a lot and are bringing it to tournaments kind of know that like, oh, don't counter Sea King's Blessing because I'm still going to draw 5 no matter what. Yeah.
Right, yeah. There are some ins and outs. There are some cards that I think are powerful against Nadu. Stuff like Toxic Deluge, stuff like Cyclonic Rift, things that can get rid of the board without targeting. That stuff I feel like is pretty good.
I've had cards like Dress Down and
Final Showdown.
That's the one, the new one from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Be really good against me for a turn as well. And sometimes that's all that you need to have your whole plan go completely awry.
Yeah, Drowneth Magistrate, of course, it's a very commander-focused deck. If you have to remove the Nadu, giving them 1 trigger and having them have no Nadu is better than them having a Nadu and getting a whole bunch more triggers. So still get rid of it whenever you can.
And the dream scenario of turn 1 Drowneth Magistrate is also still like great into any pod.
I do firmly feel like it's a kill on sight deck. Now, I don't think that it's not the best deck in the format. It's still very early. It's no blue farm. It's no rock side, but I do think it's going to show up at top tables. And I do think it's the type of commander similar to Cody, where if you let it untap, there's a good chance they're going to win the game. Does that feel fair? I mean, you play the deck. That didn't always happen, but
no, like you do need a repeatable engine in play for this deck to do anything, right? So like, I don't think that you need to aggressively target it if it doesn't have that engine. Like if you can just like win the game ahead of it too, I think that's also possible. Like it's going to have like clunky draws too. So I would just say like take advantage of when it does have clunky draws. If it doesn't seem like it can be doing its thing, then like go for your thing and advance your board. Don't worry about it as much.
That's true. Yeah, if you have the option to kill the Nadu or go for a win, I think it's oftentimes probably better to just go for the win instead.
But I think when we've been seeing like much huger commanders from the command zone.
By huger, you mean Atraxas and Atalis huger?
Atraxas, Atalis, and Tivits. Things with big power and toughness in the command zones. I don't know. Maybe it's just anecdotal for me, but I feel like I've been seeing a lot less Toxic Deluge in the format recently, and I think this is just a reason to start bringing that card back into the format again as well.
Yeah, definitely. What are some things that you've learned from playing the deck recently? When we went to Atlanta, you played the deck a whole bunch. What was your first couple takeaways from playing the deck?
So, especially from the games with Al, now that I just finished putting together this week's Chill to Win and we just narrated the other game, I've really learned that Nadu isn't just something that you can have and have it be like a good engine. Like it needs a Fetal Alchemist to come out first so that when you cast Nadu on turn 2, then you can have something go. But if you like Nadu on turn 1 off of a Jeweled Lotus, a Fetal Alchemist on turn 2, that's like immediately the best way to get a target on your back, right? So I think the best thing that I've learned is just to kind of still play a little bit safely with this. Like I've gotten fooled into playing Nadu out too quickly, and even though targeting it does get me another trigger, right, I still don't want to pay 5 mana for it, especially after Jeweled Lotus has already been expended.
It seems like it's better to make sure that you play the Nadu almost when you can like have a Nadu trigger ready to go. Like you have the equipment already there, you have the Alchemist already there, you have the cantrip already in your hand, you already have a couple creatures in play. Like wait a little bit to play the Nadu sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like I've been leaving Mystic Remora out for like 6 turns before I play Nadu, and like I'd much rather do that until I'm like ready to go with some good triggers and I already have a decent board established as well.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the best things about this deck is like it is kind of like a combo deck, but the fail state of when you don't win with the deck is you're left with like a whole bunch of extra lands in play and a whole bunch of extra creatures in play and a whole bunch of extra cards in hand. Like your fail state is you went up in cards in every single way. So it does make it super resilient. So the longer you wait, the stronger it is, I think.
And a lot of those cards could be interaction.
Right.
And because you've also netted a ton of mana during that time, like Pact of Negation defensively doesn't even seem so bad when you can still just get 15 more triggers on your turn.
Right, and it's specifically the Nantuko.
The Springheart Nantuko, you know, that's one on the list of cards that we forgot.
Yeah, that is one we did not think about. This effect just hasn't really been good in cEDH yet, but we've never seen it like this cheap. What is this card?
No, so Springheart Nantuko is 1 and a green for a 1/1 enchantment creature insect monk. It has bestow of 1 and a green. It says enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and it says landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 and a green if Springheart Nantuko is attached to a creature you control. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature. If you didn't create a token this way, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. So really, we should cross off from the words whenever to way, and really it should just say landfall, create a 1/1 green insect creature token, and that's all this needs to do.
Yeah, that's the best thing about this, because it creates another body for Nadu to attach something to, which could oftentimes lead to another land, which creates another body, etc., etc. That's the part way after. That clone part, like, there are some neat things that you could do with that clone thing in certain decks, sure, but in Nadu, it's a 2-mana creature that makes a 1/1 on landfall.
I've never bestowed it because it seems bad. It's way too much more mana, and like whatever ETB thing I'm getting is not going to be good enough. It really just like helps propel you until you can find Scoot Swarm, and
It's a shitty Scoot Swarm is really what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. So by the time you get this, I don't know. I have what, like an 80% chance to win the game at that point. I don't know the exact math, but like if I find 2 lands and like Worldly Tutor, bada bing, bada boom. Like I feel so ready to go at that point.
The point that I scoop against Nadu is when you have the Shuko, or one of the artifacts that equips for 0, a Scoot Swarm, and you've already like made the copies of Scoot Swarm once. So you have like 4 total Scoot Swarms. If you're at that point and you don't slow down, there's no way we're winning the game, because the next land is going to make 4 more Scoot Swarms. The next one after that is going to make 8 more Scoot Swarms, and then you can equip to each of those, getting double the amount of cards visible. It's like the Kark and Sakashima. Once they get a certain number of Karks and Sakashimas, it's like there's no possibility way that they'll actually whiff anymore.
I feel like if Kark and Sakashima whiffs, it can still end up with a lot of cards in hand still, because it doesn't actually expend cards a lot of the time.
That's true, but the whiff with this one is you also have 25 creatures in play and 45
true.
lands in play.
And if you try to do anything to them, I'm going to get a ton of triggers too.
Yeah, don't touch them.
Don't touch them.
Don't touch 'em.
That's so funny. Maybe this means that I want to start playing like Slip Out the back in my list, and like ways that I can like phase out Nadu, so that even if I do get deluged, I can still like untap with Nadu, play like some more creatures, and then like Sea King's Blessing or something.
Have you thought about the Nantuko in Atali? Since you can make it a copy of the thing you bestow it upon, you can make it a copy of the Atali.
No, you know what? I haven't thought about it in Atali.
So it's 2 mana to bestow it on? Is that right?
It's 2 mana to bestow it on, and then landfall, you have to pay 2 more to make a copy of that thing.
So for 4 mana, if you already have Atali out,
yeah,
and then also a fetch land, that's 2 more Atalis, or 1 land is 1 more Atali.
That's pretty wild.
That seems good.
That seems good.
Is that good?
I should probably be looking for more ways to do things with Atali while Atali's in play.
I think that's true.
Because I feel like I do way more than enough to get Atali into play.
And then if it doesn't win the game, you're like, okay.
I spin into everyone's counter spells and mana rocks, and I go, well, fuck, what do I do?
Yeah, now I have the 7/7.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like this is like the perfect thing to do after Atali's in play. You bestow it, and then I already have 7 mana because I cast Atali. So
that's how that works all the time, every time.
Every time, right? Jewel Lotus doesn't matter.
Nope,
Orcish Lumberjack doesn't matter.
Don't think about those cards. But I think having 4 mana is possible. Having 4 mana after the 7 mana, I think, is often doable.
I think so too. Yeah, even on the same turn, like there's a lot of times where I spin into a lot of folks' other mana.
Yeah.
So it can be very easy to set up in the same turn. And again, like even late game, when Atali's in play doing nothing, I think Springheart Nantuko might actually get a slot in that deck. That seems really good.
We got him, boys.
Yeah, that seems great.
We had some other ones?
Oh, yeah, we had a couple other ones. This card we played against a couple times this weekend. Talon Gates of Madara. If you pronounce it differently, it's Madara, which is a Naruto character. Talon Gates of Madara is a land gate, and when it enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature phases out.
We missed that.
How
did we miss that?
How do we miss that?
So good.
It taps for a colorless. It can filter mana as well by tapping and paying a colorless. You can make a mana of any color. And for 4 mana, you can put Talons of Madara from your hand onto the battlefield, which is nuts. Like, this is an instant speed thing that you can do to interact with someone's win condition.
Yeah, or a sorcery speed on your turn for effectively literally 0 mana. You can just phase something out, phase out the Janeth Magistrate, play your commander, pass a turn.
Wild. Now, unfortunately, both times that we saw it in play,
It didn't do anything.
it did not do its thing, but its floor is still just like a land, so it still did a thing.
Yeah, I think if you're playing crop rotation, I think if you're already doing ways to find lands or you're doing stuff like that, I think this is a great card to help you get rid of it. Individual Stax pieces also is like weird ramp in the late game if you have extra mana, I guess. It's flexible removal that can also be mana, which I love.
We saw Veggie Wagon play this in Elsha.
Right. It didn't matter at all, like you said, but he did crush us in that game. So maybe it did matter. It was a land.
Actually, we saw this in both games that we
Yeah.
played with Veggie. We are now, by the way, 0-3
Against
to Veggie Wagon.
Yeah, cannot beat him. He's the end boss for us.
He really is.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to do. We have to start playing much more heavily against him. But
Yes, yeah.
But we also saw Power Balance be really good in Elsha as well.
Yeah, I think that is the one deck where Power Balance is very good. I don't know that it's a great card outside of Elsha deck, but in a deck like Elsha where you're actively looking for top, you're already looking on your top with Elsha, it kind of just fits your strategy perfectly, and it ended up being pretty good, right?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. The second you get your second one, it starts to feel good, and Veggie got like a ton more triggers than that off of it, which was awesome. I don't necessarily know if I see a home for that card outside of Elsha, but I'm glad that we did get to see it go off in Elsha, though.
Yes, yeah, I agree. That is the home. If you want to play Power Balance, Elsha is the deck to play, and I think Elsha is a fine deck. I think it really is like a great deck. Jeskai is a great color combination. You're in great intuition, Underworld Breach lines, and also Elsha specifically being part of a pretty easy to assemble, low mana cost combo, and then being sort of card advantage also, and being a huge beater. She kind of like checks off a lot of boxes.
Yeah, there's not really a lot of bad cards that you have to play in that deck.
Helm of Awakening.
That's really the only one,
the name?
because yeah, making everything cheaper for everyone kind of is not good.
But besides that, you just wait. You play that until you're ready to combo. You don't play that early, I guess, a lot of the time, and I think it's fine.
Yeah.
We have some other cards?
Yes, Waterlogged Teachings. This card does some stuff. For 3 and a hybrid Demir. I don't know why that took me so long to
Your
say.
brain was like, wow, what is
What
this?
is, yeah. I've never seen this before.
How do I say it?
So this is an instant that says search your library for an instant card or a card with flash, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. And it's also a land. Now this one has to come into play tapped, but that's because it could tap for both blue and black.
Yeah,
which are the two best cEDH colors.
They are the best colors. This is a terrible rate. I will be honest. 4 mana for a tutor is a lot, but it's a 4 mana instant speed tutor that can go find a Force of Will. If you need it to be, it can still be that land, a tap land that doesn't do anything else. That also kind of stinks. It's definitely a card that all of its modes are at too high of a rate, but being able to find Ad Nauseam or Force of Will is not the worst thing to have on a land. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. If you're in Dimir already and you really like both of those cards, like you often want to have either a counter spell that can counter anything or an Ad Nauseam to help you win the game, especially if you're making a lot of mana. If you do get to 9 mana when you have this, out of nowhere, that's fun.
Maybe this is a Nimrus card.
Maybe it's a Nimrus card. Maybe it's a Yuriko card because it is a mana cost land and it can still ping people for 4 off Yuriko.
Oh, and then even like worst case scenario on your turn 1 in Yuriko, you play this tapped, but you still have Ornithopter and Memnite, so like you still have things that will get in.
It feels close to playable in certain Dimir decks that are already close to really good, so I don't know. It's a card that you would often say when both sides are bad, it feels kind of bad to play the card. And I do kind of feel that, but we're playing cEDH. We want all of our cards to be good cards.
Exactly, right? Like if this is replacing a good card in your deck, like I don't think that's good either.
But being flexible is also super important. So if you're in a deck that wants to be extra flexible and want to have extra ways to get whatever you want, this is maybe an option.
All right, our next card that we forgot is Ocelot Pride. This is a white mana for a creature cat. It's a 1/1 with first strike and lifelink. This is already way over the top.
Yeah.
But it also has Ascend, which says if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, create a 1/1 white cat creature token. Then if you have the city's blessing, for each token you control that enter the battlefield this turn, create a token that's a copy of it.
I didn't initially pick this one because I'm afraid of Orcish Bowmaster. I'm so tainted right now. Anything with 1 toughness, I'm like, Could this possibly see play? No. But I do see why you wanted to talk about it again, because it produces a lot of bodies for 1 mana if it goes unchecked.
Yeah, expensive Esper commanders are very interested in this card.
Tokens.
Yeah, because Tivit makes a ton of tokens, which means that if you are able to go to your end step and you have the City's Blessing, which is mega easy to do by the time you have Tivit, you have the City's Blessing if you have this too. Yeah, that's guaranteed. Then that means that for each token you control that entered the battlefield this turn, you create a copy of them. So you essentially double the amount of tokens you get off Tivit.
Right, and you'll normally name treasure twice yourself, so you can cast this main phase 2 after you've played the Tivit.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Go to your end step and then make 5 more tokens.
You make 2 more treasures if you voted treasures, and then if everyone else voted clues, you make 3 more clues, essentially making 4 and 6 instead of your 2 and 3 spread.
That seems specifically good in Tivit. I'm still afraid of Orcish Bowmaster, but that seems specifically good. It seems great in Tivit because you can do that right away. You can cast Tivit, cast this right away, and if they don't have Orcish Bowmaster there, it immediately was 1 mana, double your tokens, and I think that's like fine. And then if it sticks around for longer than that, it goes crazy, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it'll go absolutely nuts. So again, this card has a mega high ceiling there. Marnius decks are also going to really want this too.
Sure.
That deck just has way too many ways, arguably, to make tokens.
It's not a warrior, is it?
This is just a cat.
Does Nixilis still want
does
it?
Nixilis still want this?
Because that could seem good.
That could be good.
If you want to go combat Nagila, if you want to go Nagila Zoo in cEDH, this is definitely
the card for you. Yeah.
Is that right? I don't know. But if you wanted to do that, combat damage with
Cut
Nagila
your
in
wild
cEDH,
Mikado and put this in.
there you go. Yeah, this would be great there.
Yeah, definitely agreed. All right.
What about Tevishot decks?
Tevishot decks, how many 0/1s do you want? I guess is my question. Yeah, because like those tokens aren't good. Like you make you make 2 more 0/1s, I guess.
Great. Yeah. Okay, you're right. Yeah.
Great, yeah.
I'm already pissed that I had to make the 2.
Yeah, right. The best thing this does is when you down take Tevish, you can sacrifice your 1 mana creature, the Ocelot Pride,
to
and draw 2 cards.
Yeah. Okay, not great there.
No, I don't think I like it there, but I really like it in Tivit. I think this is like a real Tivit card.
Cool.
All right, cool. And we have one other card that we totally forgot to talk about. It's called Unstable Amulet. This is 1 in a red for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. Kind of who gives a shit. It also says, whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Unstable Amulet deals 1 damage to each opponent. And you can tap it and pay 2 energy to exile the top card of your library. And you may play it until you exile another card with Unstable Amulet. What the fuck? That's weird. Again.
What the fuck? That's weird. Oh, man, that really got me for some reason.
Yeah, Nixilis really likes this card, only for the text in the middle. Everything else that they weirded stupidly is just bullshit text. Because every time that Nixilis gets a trigger, you get a card in exile. You cast the thing that you just exiled to get another trigger. Oh my god, it's to each opponent. How does Nixilis work with each opponent triggers again?
I think just the text of Nixilis will state it.
Let's read it. Whenever 1 or more opponents each lose exactly 1 life, put a +1/+1 counter on Nixilis, exile the top card of your library until your next end step. You may play that card.
So it's just 1. Still good, though. Very good.
Still good. Very good. And just a way that you can keep chaining Nixili. What I really like about this, too, is that I think this helped Nixilis get into the top 4 pod twice in one of the Command Fest Atlanta tournaments, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Do we know if it actually came up or not? Or we're just assuming because
I'm just assuming because why else would that deck have made 2 appearances in the top 4?
Nightmare card, Chthonian Nightmare.
You know what? Chthonian Nightmare, I'm sure had a lot to do with it.
That card seems also very good. We talked about that one. We didn't talk about this one. Nixilis, I think it's creeping up. I wasn't sure if Rakdos or Nixilis was going to be the next like Rakdos deck. I think it's seeming more and more like Nixilis is just having that Rhystic Study type effect, having that ability to get advantage off of stuff your opponents do right in the command zone.
That's what it is.
That's really good to have. And then also the fact that it's a win condition and it does all these other things and has so many great synergies. Nixilis seems really good right now.
Like Rakdos is really good too because you set it up yourself. You don't have to rely on your opponents and you can see cards in like huge swaths at a time, which is really good. But I also do like the fact that Nixilis is stupid easy to trigger, and a lot of times opponents just kind of have to do what they have to do. So they will fetch, or they will use Mana Confluence, or they will forget that like Force of Will also loses them a life, so that you will get like another trigger. So I think Nixilis's repetitive value is frequent enough that because you're not putting anything into it yourself, it's totally worth it on a much cheaper commander.
One issue with Nixilis is you can't control what is all going exiled sometimes. So if the Underworld Breach gets exiled before you're ready to go for it, that can be bad. Sometimes you'll just have to cast the Underworld Breach and then let it get sacrificed or something like that.
You kind of have to be ready for it now.
Yeah, there are situations, but that happens rarely. More often than not, you're going to be able to cast a lot of the cards. I think the deck is built with that in mind, that you're going to want to be able to be proactive off of very little. So overall, that's okay, but that will happen sometimes, so just kind of have a game plan of how to get out of those situations. Other than that, deck seems really good into mid-range pods, has the ability to go really fast if it's needed to. Just it offers a lot. It's a great deck. And this card is going in that deck, bringing full circle to why we're talking about this in the first place. This card that we mentioned that I don't remember the name of already.
Unstable Amulet.
Unstable Amulet, thank you.
Were there any other cards that came up that from our 10 games that we played over the weekend from Modern Horizons that stood out to you?
I don't think so. It's early to tell. Oftentimes in cEDH, the new cards, I may not see them for a couple weeks. I still haven't seen a Chthonian Nightmare in play, and I've played against decks with it in their deck and just hasn't come up yet.
That's the problem with testing in cEDH, is that sometimes it takes forever for cards to come up and you go, it's not even like a card that's worth tutoring.
Right.
Like I tested Sheoldred's Edict in Nimrus for months. And I never saw it.
Yeah, if it's not specifically like a win condition or a super big advantage engine, oftentimes like removal like that, you might not see it for a while because you don't tutor for it.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say those are the cards that we forgot to talk about then. How do you feel about Modern Horizons 3 impact in cEDH so far?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's enough to shake up the format just a little bit so far, it seems. I think having Nadu as an addition to the format is really cool. Having like a new deck that seems like it's a tier 1. Now, again, it's early to tell, you know what I mean? This might all be hype. This may just be a lot of people are playing it. This may just be people don't know how to play against it yet. Maybe once we figure out everyone just pack your 6 or 7 hate pieces for Nadu, and then Nadu might not show up again. It's hard to tell so early on which decks are going to be able to be resilient through the hate. Timnicrom, I still think at the top. Rogsai, still near the top. Kinnan, still near the top. Sisay, still near the top. This one, I think, is just under those right now, just because it's new. It could end up being at the same level as some of those cards.
I think it's going to end up falling to more Stax pieces than those other decks that you mentioned, because another card that we forgot to mention that really does help shut Nadu off is Collector Oof type effects, because not only do all of your artifacts, which are really like the only ways that you can kind of go infinite with Nadu, Unctus is another way that you'll try to get multiple Nadu triggers off on your creatures, and that's also an artifact, so that shuts that off.
It's interesting. I feel like a lot of the decks that were playing Collector Oof shifted to things like
the One Ring.
Well, yeah, the One Ring, but also instead played things like Dauntless Dismantler and Manglehorn instead of Collector Oof,
yeah,
which are notably much less effective against Nadu.
That's true. Like, Nadu does not give a shit about Manglehorn because
Shuko still comes in on top. Sure, yeah.
It doesn't affect the activated ability.
I'm still going to
shift it. Yeah.
So maybe that's a shift that some of the more grindy mid-range Staxy decks are going to have to make, and then maybe that'll cause a problem.
Yeah. And Null Rod is a card that all decks can play. So if you hate Nadu enough, every deck can play that.
Are we at that stage where it's time for a deck to just jam as many Null Rods in it as possible and just play 0 artifacts, play Yasharn or something like that?
I feel like all those decks still play 4 to 5 mana artifacts.
They still probably do. It's like the best Jewel Lotus deck. Well, that's not true, but Yasharn is a very good Jewel Lotus deck.
Why would you not want that out on turn 1?
Right, yeah. But maybe the other ones you say no, and I'm just going to play all of the mana hate and make sure I always break parity on it. All my cards are always live. Are we there yet?
That's a great movie.
Great movie. But yeah, maybe, I don't know. If there's a deck that would do it, it would be a Selesnya Yasharn deck. I feel like all of those artifacts don't work cards are in Selesnya, basically, right?
Well, of course, because you have Stony Silence to add to the list of cards that we're talking about here.
And then also the Manglehorns and the Dauntless Dismantlers, you still play those. And the issue that deck is going to have is the issue that Stax decks have forever had is you got to chop, finish,
you got
win
to
the
finish
game.
the game then, yeah.
You got to finish. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say finish and win. So I'm saying winish, and that's not right. You got to finish the game in 50 minutes if you're going to win in a tournament. 50 is the amount? No, it's more than that. It's like 70 or 80.
Your 60 card brain is on.
Sorry, yeah. You get 80 minutes. Sometimes 90?
Sometimes 90.
But still, you got to finish the game, and Yasharna is going to have a hard time doing that still. But maybe we're getting closer.
We might be getting closer to that too. Yeah, maybe you just add more colors, because that's the good thing to do, right? In that scenario, when you're not playing as many mana artifacts, as you play more colors.
But I want to play the artifacts when in my Blood Pod deck that could play those effects.
I
I
guess
want to
that's
play
true,
Birthing Pod in
yeah.
the One Ring.
You haven't made any strategies to help you beat Nadu in your decks, have you?
No major adjustments yet. I have thought about taking Atraxa apart. I want to be able to do more a little bit earlier on. Atraxa, I'm having a great time if I'm playing in a pod that's full of other blue farms and everyone else is also on Ristic Study stuff. It feels great. But if people are trying to win on turn 2, or if people are staxing me out on turn 2, I'm sitting in Atraxa going, great, well, I draw 14 cards and I can't win the game. So I think I might switch off Atraxa to something that's a little bit more early, aggressive, something like that.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, I feel like the format might actually be speeding up a little bit.
I think that's the answer. We were talking a little bit in a previous podcast about how to get out of this mid-range hell. And something that we touched on a little bit, but maybe should have touched on more, is I think a great way to do that is to just go fast.
Yeah.
Like win on turn 2. Win the turn that the Ristic Study comes down, so they only have that turn to find a Force of Will. And if they don't find exactly free interaction because they're probably tapped out because they just tapped out for their engine, then you should be able to win, hopefully.
Especially if you have like one other piece of interaction, which a lot of the times you probably will have. So
I mean, decks like that can win on turn 2. That's the speed that I would want to be going fast at. I've been playing Cody recently, and in my hands, I feel like I can very consistently win on turn 3, but that feels like it's too late. Everyone played their card advantage engines on turn 2, and now it's turn 3, and they have untapped mana, and their card advantage engines have stuck around for a turn, where it's much more difficult to win on turn 3. But if you go for it on turn 2, oftentimes, depending on your seating order, not everyone's ready to stop you just yet.
I feel like my best Nadu games, my engine comes into play on turn 1, like my Lightning Greaves or something like that. And then Nadu comes down on turn 2 and can get me like a ton of triggers at that point, so that I can basically be set up to protect myself for a turn 3 win. Those are the games where I feel like it does exceptionally well and it really shines.
Yeah, the turn 2 where you don't exactly win, but you instead pass a turn with 15 lands in play, 7 cards in your hand, 14 creatures in play, and you pass, and everyone goes,
yeah.
you know, okay, I'm going to tap.
And you're
for
still getting more triggers on other people's turns.
Right, yeah. So, especially with the Alchemist and the green one that I feel like, what's the green one's name?
Seeker of the Skybreaker or something.
Yeah, the green one's also very good.
Yeah,
too.
having 2 Seedborn Muses in your deck. That's
Basically.
how I think of them, is that there are two mana Seedborn Muses in your deck.
Yeah, because each you just untap itself and you get the trigger on each player's turn. You can do that twice all around.
Exactly. So
good.
essentially, if you have that on turn 1, Nadu turn 2, that's 8 cards you're going to see going into your turn 3.
That's a hard game to lose. That
That is
point.
a very hard game to lose, yeah. The 1 mana spells, I feel like we just keep talking about them, but they're also just like a great way to just get like a ton of triggers all in one burst, especially like at instant speed if you just need to find more interaction. Or I would use that to like try to find more lands so that I could use like a 2 mana counter in my hand and like have it actually ramp me to fix my mana and allow me to interact and stop people from winning.
And it's great to have them at instant speed too, because oftentimes someone will say like, I'm going to cast a Toxic Deluge, and you go, okay, well, I have 6 creatures out. That's why they cast a Toxic Deluge. They want to kill my creature. So in response, cast this Sea King's something, Revenge.
Blessing or a Sylvan's Blessing or something.
Yeah, Sylvan's Blessing. Get 5 triggers, look at 5 different cards. Maybe one of those cards is probably going to be a Force of Will. Like, it allows you to get yourself out of the situations that you find yourself in. It's so good.
It's so good, yeah. I've had so much fun playing this deck. I don't have a more than 50% win record with this deck. I know that.
Yeah, it's not that good. It's not busted good, you know.
No.
But it's still you won like 30% of your games. I 40.
I would say,
like that.
yeah, I definitely won more than 25% of my games, which is where I feel really comfortable with the deck. And I know I'm not the best player in the universe either, especially with the deck that I'm still trying to learn.
And a complicated deck at that.
Especially, yeah. And like figuring out that like, oh, this doesn't work with this too, because I did this. And even like going back and looking at the games that I played with Nadu as well. I know a lot of you noticed that the first game that we played on the channel with Nadu, I cast the One Ring and
Giving
then
yourself protection from everything.
From everything.
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 It's not stuff that your opponent has.
Nope.
It's everything.
And then I proceeded to go through an endurance loop where I targeted myself.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess, like, I don't know.
You didn't
in my head,
you didn't do
I'm
anything with that one ring. You didn't
I
have to
didn't.
cast
No,
that.
in my
Didn't
head, I'm
matter.
just pretending like that never happened, and
Right.
I just knew that I could have gone through this win the whole time. So like, I don't know. I could have won, and I'm just like a bumbling idiot sometimes when I'm like trying to figure out a deck, but
Nadu is still good though.
it's still really good. Yeah.
What about you? Any new cards coming from the Modern Horizons 3 that you have implemented into your decks?
Well, yeah, Springheart Nantuko is 100% going into a tally all of a sudden.
Okay, yeah, but besides that one.
Really, for me, it's been picking up Nadu.
Yeah.
Has been my biggest thing. And I've been having a lot of fun with that deck. And I do want to keep jamming that deck, playing that a lot more because it is a lot of fun. I want to give other players a chance to figure out how to beat it so that I cannot be such a big boogeyman in the format and I can just play it enjoyably instead of being hated on so much.
That makes sense. What's the name of the land, the forest land that becomes a copy of something in the graveyard? Do you remember this one?
Shifting Woodlands.
Shifting Woodlands. Do you think that I should play this in Blood Pod?
This card's awesome.
You think it's good enough?
Yeah, Birthing Pod gets countered, and then you make it a Birthing Pod. That seems great.
But how often does that happen enough? Like, I feel like more often than not with the Birthing Pod, I'll get stopped by someone killing a Kiki Jiki rather than countering the Birthing Pod for some reason.
It will
Maybe that's not
depend on
true.
the interaction that they have, because if I only have an offer you can't refuse, I can't let you get to that point.
But it can still become a copy of the Kiki Jiki if they stop that, right?
That's also true, right?
It doesn't tap to activate.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about taking the Surveillance out of Blood Pod, actually. There have been a couple times where that deck is just like, it thrives on being able to hit its land drops and double spell early on. It's the main reason why I took the Rule of Laws out of the deck, because being able to cast 2 threats that also stop the board each turn is really good. And the Surveillance do kind of stop that. I've been thinking, I think I should take them out.
How many are you running in?
Playing 2.
You're playing 2?
I want to be able to fetch for either color. If I'm going to play the Surveillance, I have to be able to find them off of any fetch. So if I'm playing 4 colors, I feel like I have to get the whole spectrum. And it hasn't felt good. In Atraxa, it actually has felt pretty good, but in Blood Pod, it hasn't.
Do you remember that one game when you specifically said, this was really bad?
Yeah, there was a game in Atraxa that I said, hey, Cameron, remind me that this is really bad, that I have this tap land in my hand.
I have to remind you about that right now, yeah.
Maybe these Surveillance are not so great all the time. Maybe just one is the answer. Maybe in 4-color decks, it's not great. Maybe in 3-color decks, it's a little bit better if you play just the one.
Even then, I'm still like only finding myself in that scenario once a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think I want to hedge to the point where it's worth making my mana base worse, like just in case I'm finding myself there. I think it's more ideal that I don't find myself in that scenario, honestly.
It is so often that like you can be off by 1 mana, and to be staring at a tap land when you need just 1 more mana can be so tilting. Maybe it's just better to not have it in your deck.
Yeah.
If you're slower, I still think, I don't know. I'm not saying that they're terrible. I think the Surveillance are still playable, but I'm thinking about cutting back a little bit. I think 2 is too much.
There's more 2-color decks that I want them in more. Like, I would love a second one for a Tali. I would love a second one for Nadu. I'm like slightly considering the Temple for Nadu just because like it lets me see something else.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
It triggers Lotus Cobra though. Like that deck already plays way too many tap lands between like Field of the Dead and that kind of stuff.
I wouldn't be surprised if you played like the bounce land though. Is that silly?
Simic Growth Chamber.
Is that an option?
Yes, because I don't play things that give me additional land drops.
But if you get it off of a Nadu, no, still
it goes
not.
into play immediately.
Yeah, but you still get the trigger. You bounce it back up, and it's probably not worth it.
I'm never getting more lands in my hand, so it's not worth playing like extra land effects.
Okay, that's fair. I was just thinking if you don't have the extra land, you can like get it off the Nadu trigger, bounce itself, and then play it as your land for turn.
The deck plays like 33 lands. I'm finding I always have a land in my hand already.
We were already saying that the Surveil land is questionable. I think the bounce lands are sort of definitely worse.
Yeah, I'm more so like looking for excuses to cut back on other tap lands, if anything.
You have other tap lands in the deck?
Between that and like colorless sources, because like I am playing Urza Saga, I'm playing Mishra's Factory.
Okay, I think that one's good.
No, I'm not.
You're playing Mishra's
Workshops.
Land.
No, I am playing Factory. I was right the first time.
Yeah, it's a Factory.
I was thinking Shops was right, and then once I said Shops, I immediately knew I was
that's
wrong.
not right.
Yeah.
Are you playing Inkmoth Nest 6?
No. If anything, I shaved on Manlands to be down to just Dryad Arbor and Mishra's Factory.
Well, why not Inkmoth over Mishra's Factory?
Because I'm never attacking with it. What's the point?
I guess, but just flying. I guess having 2 toughness is better than 1 toughness for Orcish Bowmaster.
Yeah, it's just a little bit bigger, I guess.
But you can play Mutavault. That would be fun. Mutavault's fun.
You know what? I think Mutavault is the one that I shaved, and maybe that's not right. Maybe I was thinking that because the factory can pump itself to be a 3/3, that's worth it. So it's a 3/3 blocker.
Okay, yeah. It just seems like those creature lands are so good in the deck. I would be interested in more, but I understand making like the pips are also super important.
Yeah, I feel like if there's anything that I would do, I should actually look to cut a spell to put in Mutavault, because I'm finding that like I do want to make sure I have more lands, but I would love more lands that can also be targeted by Unctus or Shunko or something like that to keep me going. So there's a lot of good stuff. I know after playing 10 games, I know that there's changes that I want to make to the deck. I'm just finding it hard to know what to cut because everything feels so important and it feels so good in so many circumstances. So
It's still new. Format's still new. We're going to be testing it out for a while now. It's here to stay. Nadu is here to stay.
definitely here to stay. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap on the new stuff that we found in Modern Horizons. Join us next week when we talk about other things we forgot from Modern Horizons.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so on Patreon, like our $100 patrons.
Very Khan, Old and Grumpy, Odd Cesarian, Gecko21, Caleb Ritchie, Zach Hartley, Kajo Alex, Sean in the Ice, Mark Cirillo, SoCal Acura, Stormageddon, Luke Cook, Demon of Rosgrees, Peter Stewart, Cornell Wild, Uncle Butts, Dick Foles Godo 9, Kawacha A. Hamid, Lauren Connell, and Baby G-Bus.
If you want to pick up any of our merch, you can do that at playtowinmtg.com.
Big thank you to Dragon Shield for supporting the show. Use our link and code PlayToWin5 for 5% off your order to support the show.
Follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram for more content.
Thank you so much for watching or listening.
See you next time, or listening.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Subscribe to us on YouTube.
Like and hit that noti bell.
Ding-a-ling-ling.
Mystic Muffin Man, Nick Saxby, Jacob Bauer, Reactive, Tyler Watson, Brian Barrington, Zachary Coulson, Tyler H, X Tyler the Tree X, Ballcraft, Driving Crooner, Jabaha, Mace the Ace, Dalton Poteet, Hubble Ghost, Justin, Man Solo, Pedro, Jacob Depp, Michael Below, Jan Wildfang, Thomas Bueno, and David Nelson.
Humina.
Welcome to the podcast.
Couldn't have said it better myself.